On this Thursday night, a winter storm crashes into southern Ontario and Quebec. The chaos for drivers, flyers, and anyone else braving the elements.
That's a mess.
Turning around a turbulent relationship.
It's a partnership with new focus.
The deals Canada just signed with China. Outrage over another ICE shooting in Minneapolis.
If they continue to rape our constitutional rights, we will defend the Constitution.
Why the U.S. president could invoke the Insurrection Act. Plus, guess who's been presented with the Nobel Peace Prize?
Global National with Donna Friesen.
Good evening and thanks for joining us. A winter storm is disrupting life for millions of people in parts of southern Ontario and Quebec. Getting around has been difficult. Up to 40 centimeters of snow has fallen in Toronto, and police are reporting more than 200 collisions. Schools and universities have cancelled classes, and at Toronto's Pearson Airport, snowplows are hard at work. More than 500 flights have been cancelled or delayed, causing a ripple effect of travel disruption across the country. Mike Armstrong has our top story tonight.
Before most of Toronto even woke up, the city already had a good buildup of snow. Getting around by car was difficult. By bicycle, pretty close to impossible.
Oh, having a hard time. I'm going to work. I'm going to be late.
It was clear early the day was going to be a challenge. Several school boards canceled classes, including the largest in Canada. The Toronto District Board told 235,000 students to stay home.
It's very difficult to operate an entire school system when your staff can't get to work.
Now, roads are very much the story of the day. For those who ventured out, it was commute chaos. Toronto's LRT was shut down and buses were getting stuck. Streets at times turned into parking lots.
Just stuck here at the moment. Yeah, it's a mess. Yeah, there's nothing you can do about it, so.
Highways were hit hard as well. Toronto's Don Valley Parkway was shut down for hours. Ontario Provincial Police say in the Toronto-Hamilton region, they had more than 200 collisions and 125 cars off the road.
Slow down, give yourself space.
OPP Sergeant Carrie Schmidt took to social media to urge people to stay off the roads if they could and to show what might happen if they venture out.
2-vehicle crash, another crash just up ahead here. You can see the snow that the vehicles were stuck in.
Snow clearing crews at Pearson Airport were busy. More than 500 flights were delayed or canceled.
Well, it's also important to remember that Toronto Pearson is the biggest airport in Canada. So when flights are delayed or canceled here due to weather events, it can have a ripple effect across the country.
Now, the same storm hit eastern Ontario and parts of Quebec, though those regions had fewer issues. But one thing that did make this storm tougher was that it wasn't predicted until yesterday. Environment Canada says its forecasting models jumped around in recent days, and that's why its warnings came late. Mike Armstrong, Global News, Montreal.
Canada's Prime Minister is setting the stage for what he calls a new era of relations with China. On the first day of his visit to Beijing, Mark Carney signed a string of new agreements to increase trade, though an ongoing tariff dispute has not been resolved. David Aiken is traveling with the Prime Minister. David.
Well, Donna, Prime Minister Mark Carney is here in Beijing with 5 members of his cabinet. He's got the ministers of Industry, Foreign Affairs, Natural Resources, International Trade, and Agriculture. Plus, he's got the Premier of Saskatchewan here.
It's so great to see you again.
And they were all officially welcomed in the Great Hall of the People by China's #2 politician, Premier Li Qiang.
National anthems were followed by an inspection of a military honor guard.
And then to business.
China is ready to work with Canada to increase dialogue and communication.
Premier Li spoke of expanding mutual cooperation with Canada. Carney, for his part, spoke of a new strategic partnership with China.
It's a partnership with new focus and greater depth and a sense of purpose. And I look forward to realizing its promise and building on it in the years to come.
The two sides signed multiple new or renewed agreements on a host of issues. There was a memorandum of understanding to boost exports of Canadian pet food to China, a renewed commitment to fight crime together, and promises to boost two-way tourism. Ministers signed agreements on energy and on plans to boost the use of Canadian wood in Chinese home construction.
This is not a one and done. We will be back here more, looking for more ways to get Canadian products into this country so more Canadians have good paying jobs.
But despite the presence of Saskatchewan Premier Scott Moe at a meeting between Carney and Lee, no agreement has emerged, at least so far, to drop Chinese tariffs on Canadian canola. And Canada has not budged on dropping its tariffs on Chinese EVs.
Our goal is to make sure that we favor auto production in Canada.
Now, Carney has one more day left here in Beijing, and on Friday, he will meet with the #1 politician in the country, President Xi Jinping. Donna.
Okay, David Aiken in Beijing, thank you. A Canadian citizen is among the thousands of people killed in anti-government protests in Iran. Foreign Affairs Minister Anita Anand says consular officials are in contact with the family, and she accuses the Iranian regime of flagrantly disregarding human life. The U.S. today announced a new round of sanctions against Iran, but President Trump, who promised the Iranian people help is coming, has yet to take any other action. Redmond Shannon reports.
Following more than 2 weeks of huge anti-government protests and the threat of U.S. intervention, the streets of Tehran appeared calmer Thursday. A U.S. attack is still possible because their president is not stable, says this man. Concerns about U.S. action subsided, reportedly after pleas from Arab nations and Israel for restraint, and after U.S. President Donald Trump said Iran was no longer intending to execute arrested protesters like Irfan Soltani, something its government now says was never its intention.
I'm confident about that. There is no plan for hanging at all.
Iran's foreign minister said the number of people killed during recent protests is only in the hundreds, despite monitoring groups claiming thousands were killed. Rather than blaming security forces, Abbas Araghchi says the protesters and Iran's enemies were responsible for the killings.
President Trump has said that if there are killings, he would intervene. And they wanted to drag him into this conflict, and that was exactly an Israeli plot.
The Canadian government now says one Canadian citizen is among those killed. Foreign Affairs Minister Anita Anand said the death was at the hands of the Iranian authorities.
A brutal slaughter has taken place in my beloved homeland, Iran, and it will get much worse if the world do not take serious action.
Exiled Iranian activist Masih Alinejad addressed an emergency meeting of the United Nations Security Council, where the US re-upped its threats to act.
All options are on the table to stop the slaughter.
Russia is a key ally of Iran. Its UN ambassador says the US is trying to justify aggression and interference against a sovereign nation. Donna?
All right, Redmond Shannon in London. Thanks, Redmond. President Trump has threatened to invoke the Insurrection Act and deploy the U.S. military to Minneapolis. The governor of Minnesota is seeking to calm escalating tensions, but after another shooting by a federal immigration enforcement agent, the second in a week, there is more anger on the streets. Jackson Proskow reports.
The streets of Minneapolis erupted Wednesday night. Federal agents clashed with angry protesters, with the crowd enraged by yet another shooting. An immigration and customs enforcement officer shot a Venezuelan migrant in the leg. Officials claim it was an act of self-defense.
Last night what we saw was 3 individuals weaponize shovels and brooms and attack an ICE officer that had to defend himself.
We cannot be at a place right now in America where we have 2 governmental entities that are literally fighting one another.
Once again, local officials are telling the federal government to stand down while urging people to stay calm.
We cannot counter Donald Trump's chaos with our own brand of chaos.
But President Donald Trump seems to be escalating. He floated invoking the Insurrection Act, a rarely used law that would allow him to deploy the U.S. military against civilians.
The Insurrection Act is a tool at the president's disposal.
In the week since an American citizen, Renee Good, was shot and killed by an ICE agent, at least 6 federal prosecutors in the state have resigned after allegedly facing pressure to treat the killing of Good as an assault on a federal officer.
Off the street!
At the same time, the federal government has surged thousands of agents into the state to carry out more raids and arrests.
What's happening in Minnesota right now defies belief.
With no end in sight, the state's governor is urging residents to record everything they see.
Help us create a database of the atrocities against Minnesotans, not just to establish a record for posterity, but to bank evidence for future prosecution.
Acknowledgement that there's no sign the Trump administration will change course, leaving Minneapolis and its residents caught in a tense battle over federal powers. Jackson Proskow, Global News, Washington.
A small contingent of troops from 6 European nations has arrived in Greenland, and more are on the way as NATO allies bolster their presence on the island. Soldiers disembarked a Danish Air Force plane in Greenland's capital on Wednesday night. Germany says another reconnaissance team is on the way, while the French president says he's sending further land, air, and sea assets to join the 15 troops already on the ground to take part in Operation Arctic Endurance. The social media platform X has put restrictions in place to prevent users of its chatbot Grok from digitally undressing photos of real people. The company said it has implemented technological measures to prevent Grok from allowing the editing of images of real people and revealing clothing without their consent in jurisdictions where it's illegal. The chatbot has already been banned in Indonesia and Malaysia, and a formal investigation of X is underway in the UK. Canada's Privacy Commissioner has also launched an investigation into XAI, the company behind Grok. The commissioner says it will take into consideration the company's latest update. An extraordinary moment in Washington. Coming up, the award Venezuela's opposition leader says she presented to the American president. The U.S. military has seized another tanker carrying Venezuelan oil. This video shot by the military shows troops boarding the Veronica in a pre-dawn raid in the Caribbean. It is the 6th vessel targeted by the U.S. in recent weeks. U.S. Southern Command says the ship was defying American sanctions on Venezuelan oil. The Venezuelan opposition leader, Maria Machado, met the U.S. president at the White House today, and she emerged to say she presented Donald Trump with her Nobel Peace Prize.
I presented the President of the United States the medal of the Nobel Peace Prize.
It's not clear whether President Trump accepted it and kept it, though he has long made it clear he believed he should have won last year's prize. Machado was awarded it in recognition of her work fighting for democratic rights in Venezuela. The Norwegian Nobel Committee has said the prize cannot be revoked, shared, or transferred. The situation in Venezuela is being watched closely by neighbouring Colombia. Over the past decade, Colombia has taken in more Venezuelan refugees than any other nation and is expecting another wave. Now there are questions over what that means for Colombia's president, who has publicly butted heads with the U.S. president. Jeff Semple reports from Bogotá.
Viva Colombia! Colombians gathered near the Venezuelan border with a blunt message for the American president. That orange madman wants to remove any president who refuses to kneel to him, she says. But the strongest language directed at Donald Trump had, until recently, come from Colombia's president. Gustavo Petro, a former guerrilla fighter turned firebrand leftist politician. For months, he regularly railed against Trump, even accusing him of having a senile brain and describing the White House as a clan of pedophiles. After Venezuelan President Nicolas Maduro's removal, Trump suggested Petro could be next.
Colombia is very sick, too, run by a sick man who likes making cocaine and selling it to the United States, and he's not going to be doing it very long, let me tell you.
We see two very volatile, very delicate, very sensitive presidents to criticism that are on opposing ends of the political spectrum. Only one of them has the power and might of the United States Army behind them.
Just when it seemed like Colombia and the U.S. might be on the brink of a military conflict, the U.S. president placed a call here to Bogotá last week with an unexpected olive branch. Pedro, who had just organized an anti-Trump rally, told the crowd that he and the U.S. president spoke for almost an hour.
Que la paz se encuentra hablando.
Peace is found through dialogue, and that's why I accepted President Trump's proposal to talk, Pedro said. President Trump said it was a great honor to speak with Pedro and invited him to the White House.
So how do you explain the sudden change in the relationship between these two presidents?
Y allí nos dimos cuenta de que el presidente Trump.
We realized that President Trump had been badly misinformed, says former Colombian President Ernesto Samper Pizano, who now advises President Petro.
Sectores colombianos.
Some in Colombia and in the White House want President Petro removed and falsely told Trump that he supports the drug trade, Pizano told us.
Aunque parezca curioso,
it might seem a little strange, but the two presidents have similar personalities that allowed them to understand each other, he says. Opinion polls by Brazilian research firm Atlas Intel suggest President Petro is deeply unpopular, and Colombians overwhelmingly support the U.S. intervention to remove Maduro, but also worry about what comes next. There is fear and uncertainty over the situation in Venezuela, says Colombian journalist Christian Herrera. Colombia already hosts nearly 3 million Venezuelan refugees. The government provides them health care, education, and work. But Herrera says many Colombians now want to shut the door. They have harmed ordinary Colombians who lost their jobs to Venezuelan workers with lower wages, he says. Colombians will elect a new president in May, and events in Venezuela are widely expected to shape the outcome. Jeff Semple, Global News, Bogotá, Colombia.
Demanding a divorce from Canada.
It's been an abusive relationship for so long.
Ahead, Alberta separatists keep up their campaign. In Alberta, a petition to hold a referendum on separating from Canada appears to be gaining momentum. The group behind the petition has been holding town halls throughout the province, collecting signatures. More than 1,000 people were at one of those events in Red Deer last night, and Heather Urix West went to get a sense of the mood.
The chill of a central Alberta night in January couldn't keep hundreds from lining up in Red Deer for a chance to support an independent Alberta.
It's been an abusive relationship for so long, really. I think most of us just want out.
Everybody's fed up. We're done with it. We got to do something.
At the end of the line that snaked around the block, a chance to sign a petition calling for a referendum that would ask, do you agree that the province of Alberta should cease to be a part of Canada to become an independent state?
I am actually honored to be here and see the huge turnout of everybody, and it makes us all proud to be Albertan.
The wait here to sign this petition is more than an hour long, and this is just one of 3 signing events being held across Alberta on this particular night. Organizers have to collect just under 178,000 signatures. The turnout here fueling optimism that could be done.
I know for sure we're ahead because I've got a little rough tally in my head from the events that I do of how many signatures we're getting.
Organizers say events like this one have drawn between 1,700 and 4,000 people each night. But province-wide, 2 recent polls have tracked slightly different results. A survey by Polaris Strategic Insights found 19% of 1,000 Albertans surveyed would vote for separation, while Research Co. found 31% of 703 Albertans surveyed at least support the idea of Alberta going its own way.
And what we've seen since we last asked back in 2023 is a significant rise across the board. Support for independence is up 5 points in Edmonton, it's up 5 points in Calgary, and it's up 11 points in the rest of Alberta.
Several First Nations groups have launched legal action in a bid to stop the petition from moving forward. One application will be heard in an Edmonton court on Friday, while almost 30 additional signing events are scheduled to take place across the province through the end of the month. Heather Urix West, Global News, Red Deer, Alberta.
Safe splashdown next, the first medical evacuation of a crew from the International Space Station. Four astronauts from the International Space Station are back on solid ground. They came back a month ahead of schedule because one of them has an undisclosed medical problem. The crew splashed down safely off the coast of California overnight. Neetu Garcha reports on how it all unfolded.
A SpaceX capsule streaks across the night sky, marking an unprecedented return from orbit.
They are pulling it to the egress platform.
The 4-member crew coming home after NASA confirmed a serious medical condition affecting one of the astronauts prompted them to end the mission weeks ahead of schedule.
NASA astronauts Zena Cardman, Mike Fink, JAXA astronaut Kim Ye Yui
and Roscosmos cosmonaut Oleg Platonov are all safe and in good spirits.
The spacecraft splashed down just after midnight, capping off a more than 10-hour descent from the International Space Station.
And it looks like our first crew member out of the spacecraft.
A recovery team secured the capsule and helped the crew exit one by one, placing each on a gurney for routine post-splashdown medical evaluations.
The crew member of concern is doing fine. We will share updates on their health as soon as it's appropriate to do so.
We also don't know if the medical emergency is related to the environment of space or not.
Canadian researchers are studying the effects of prolonged time in orbit and how medical emergencies in space can impact astronauts' health.
As you can imagine, the whole environment's different. There's increased radiation to the lack of gravity, and that can really throw biology off its balance. And there are many learnings from health research in space that can also apply for patients on Earth. So there is also that translatable aspect to it.
Before the early return, NASA officials say the crew spent nearly 6 months in orbit, carrying out some 140 different hands-on science experiments.
The work we did on the International Space Station for this expedition, as well as others, benefits humanity on Earth. It benefits and teaches us for exploration, for what we're going to use in the Artemis program as we go back to the moon and to Mars.
It's the first time a medical emergency has cut an ISS mission short, as outer space continues to test the limits of human health and endurance. Neetu Garcha, Global News, Vancouver.
And that is Global National for this Thursday. I'm Donna Friesen. Tonight's Your Canada is Pontoon Lake Northwest Territories. We'd love to see Your Canada. Please email it to globalnational@globalnews.ca. Thanks for watching. Neetu Garcha will be at the anchor desk tomorrow, and I will see you again next week. Bye-bye.